Hello and welcome to another episode of All Around Azure. I'm Jason Hand and I'm your host. And today we've got another great episode with a good friend of mine, Christina Warren, and we're just trying to get her connected right now. So as soon as she gets her Skype call connected back to us, we'll see if we can get her going. But we're going to be talking about a couple of things here while we're live with Christina. And let me see. Christina, are you back with us? Are you there? Okay. Let's.
You keep clipping out on me.
Okay.
Did we end the call started again?
Yeah, I think we've got you back now. Yeah, I'm not sure which one of us lost each other there, but I can read you loud and clear. So can you hear me all right?
I can. You are coming in loud and clear now.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Well, as I was just saying to everybody on the show that's tuning in, really excited for today, and we've got a great guest with Christina Warren. And Christina, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Christina Warren, and I work with Jason. I'm a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft and kind of an all-around nerd. I'm super excited to be here on this stream, and let's talk about like building websites, man. Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, we've kicked around a few different ideas on what we were gonna do today, and just before the show, we discussed some changes that we were gonna make. So, you want to tell us a little bit about what you'd like to teach us all today?
Yeah, totally. Okay. So, and people in the chat, like, chime in and let me know if this is a struggle that you have or if it's just like me. And maybe it is just me, but I have a feeling it's a lot of people. Okay. So here's the scenario. Like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years ago, you like got excited, you built a blog. It was probably based in WordPress. You kept it up for a while. It was your main homepage because you were smart and you registered, yourname.com or .net or whatever. But then, life gets in the way. You stopped updating it and it's still there, like looking like 2013, hasn't been updated. You might have some security issues if you haven't been keeping the back end up to date. All of your content that you're doing is now living on other places. Maybe you've got Medium articles. Maybe you've got, you're doing a lot of stuff on tweets. Maybe you have like, your GitHub profile at this point is more indicative of what you actually do. And so the idea is like, okay, you want to redo your website, but the thought of having to go through that process of having to deal with WordPress again, having to find a theme, having to customize everything, having to even like decide like, do I want to keep my old stuff or not, is really overwhelming. And so I think that's been the case for me. And I've been threatening / promising to rebuild my personal website for at least 5 years. I've failed for at least 5 years. And I think that the age of like static web apps and static websites, we're going to make it work. We're finally going to rebuild it and re-own our own branding and not just trust, third-party services that might disappear one day or change their terms of service on us and take it back.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I feel like you just explained my pain that I've experienced. I don't know how many times over the past, definitely 10 years of. And part of it for me is that a new technology will come out, for like blogs and how you can do websites. And I'm like, like Ghost was one that I remembered. I was like, oh, that looks cool. It kind of, feels and looks like Medium. And I like the way Medium looks and feels. So I like redid my website from WordPress. And then, I don't know, I've done it like 3 more times since then. So I feel, I'm sure everybody on the
Yeah. And Ghost is a good one, right? Ghost is actually interesting. We're not going to get into it today, although it is notable to say that we're going to be talking about static web generators, things like Hugo or Jekyll or Gatsby, and some of those frameworks, because what's great about them is that in a lot of ways, it's going back to what the web used to be. Like when WordPress came out in like 2003, one of its big things was that it was dynamic. And so you could update content and it would update on the fly and you wouldn't have to rebuild the entire site. You could make a change, hit save and it would appear. Whereas the older like Perl-based content management systems would have to rebuild the entire site. So on the one hand, the dynamic thing was great. The downside of that would be if you got a lot of traffic, depending on what your infrastructure was, that could even just be a little bit of traffic, all that rebuilding and all of those people on your site could bring it down.
Yeah.
And what's happened over the last, decade and a half is we've kind of had this happy medium where the process of rebuilding your site, which in the Perl era would take could take 30 minutes if you had a really big site,
Hmm.
can now be really, really fast. And you also have the advantage of having these static files that, because they're not dynamic and everything is cached, when people visit, you can serve a ton of traffic without having to pay for a lot of bandwidth, and not having to cost a lot of money, or having
Yep.
to have a really beefy server behind it. So that is one of the great things. But what started to happen too is that like more traditional content management systems like Ghost, and even things like WordPress, can be used in a headless state.
Yeah.
And so what that means is that the end user could enter in all their content using WordPress or using Ghost, but the way that it is displayed on the front end is going to be using like a static site generator. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in that if you have like a less tech savvy user who doesn't want to mess with, having to edit markdown files and just wants to add a new entry or make some changes, they can still do that in, the dashboard that they know and
Yeah.
like. But on the front end, when people are accessing the site, you don't have to worry about, okay, do I have Redis enabled correctly? What kind of caching plugin do I have? Like,
Exactly.
do I am I scaling enough? Do I have enough, cores and whatnot on my VPS, or is my app service, big enough to manage all of this?
Yep,
So
exactly. And I take a lot of pride in being able to convert people to Markdown, like authors. I feel like I've come across a lot of people who are like, well, I just don't understand Markdown. Not that they don't understand it, but why do people use Markdown? Why is it suddenly so
right.
popular? And I'm just like, have you started writing content that way? Like, once you've done it that way, it anyway. But
Agreed.
yeah, it's fun to like actually see people try to start using things like Hugo and Gatsby and Markdown style websites, and then how that changes, even for some of the stuff that you and I do. We might have lost your call or your video, but even some of the stuff that you and I do, Christina, through like Microsoft Docs and Learn, we oftentimes have to use Markdown for a lot of the content that we're creating. So looks like we've gotten Christina maybe hung up again on our call here. Meanwhile, I'm going to just remind everybody while we're getting Christina back. Hopefully this doesn't take too much. Let's see, where's she at here? But while we're waiting for our call to reconnect.
Mark said about any of that. I would just use my Markdown, and that was it.
Cool. Oh, awesome. We lost you for a second, but you caught us all back up there kind of fast. Yeah, I think our call stalled out there for a second.
Okay.
But you're back. We're good now. So anyway, back to what you were saying. I think a lot of people are, feeling everything we're talking about with all these, modern ways that we can update our websites and do them in the Markdown style. I think has been, for me, helpful to just ease my process to create content, whether that's for work or personal stuff. So anyway, I guess I can maybe show your screen if there's something you want to start showing off to us.
Yeah, okay. So I guess what we'll start out first is I'm just going to go ahead and create a repo in GitHub. And so
Cool.
I've just loaded up I've already created this. I created this a little bit earlier. You can see I created this an hour ago. I'm calling it Christina Web. ASTWS for like an Azure static website for this purpose of this demo, but you could call it whatever you wanted. And this is where my site is going to live. And so I just went ahead and I created this. You could do it in the github.com. You could also do it in your portal. And I've gone ahead and I have, if you can see my terminal now, I'm now in that directory in my terminal. And so what I did is I just did like a git clone. So I've cloned that directory locally so that I can now edit it. I've also gone ahead and I've opened up that editor into my Visual Studio Code. So this is where all of our files are going to live. And so I don't have anything here yet except for just kind of a README and a license, but this is where all of our files are going to live. And so that's just kind of like the first step. And actually, some of the things, if you wanted to follow along with anything, on our docs.microsoft.com, there's a whole getting started page about, if you wanted to kind of create, a new repository for your site, whether you're in this case, they're talking about, Angular or React or Vue or not using a framework, and then what kind of the next steps there are. And so the next big thing that we want to do before we start kind of creating, kind of adding any content into our site, is I'm going to go to the Azure portal, and let me make this a little bit bigger.
And I'm going to get the link and drop it into chat for anybody who wants to check out that doc that
Fantastic.
Christina was just showing them.
All right, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the portal and I'm going to click on create a resource. And I'm going to search for where's this? Okay, so I'm going to go down to web, and I'm just going to go to static web app, and this is in preview right here. And I click on learn more. It's going to tell us that this is a streamlined, highly efficient way to take your static web app from source code to global high availability. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the create option, and I'm going to make sure that I've got my correct subscription, and I do. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a new resource group, and I'm just going to call this Christina Static Site. And for the name for this, we're going to come up with what domain name I'm going to want to use later, but I think that I want to use
we might have lost her again.
regular organization of my username, and then for my repository, I'm going to find where I've got Christina Web ASTWS. And so I'm just going to click on that. And then if I needed a specific branch, I could do that. In this case, I'm just going to be using the main branch. That's a good reminder to me. I need to go through and change that name so that it is something other than master. Yeah, and then I'm going to go to click on review and create. And it's saying that I've got form validation failed in the basics tab. I cannot
I
have
it's that apostrophe.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So I'm just going to actually just say Christina test website. All right, because that is an invalid character. All right, review and create. All right. All right, 1 second. Somebody's calling me. I got to.
Yeah, no problem. Let's put him on the show.
Let's not.
Is it a telemarketer?
Let's not. Probably. All right, we're gonna get rid of any spaces here and just say Christina site. Yeah. All right. That did it. All right. And now I'm just going, now what I could actually do is if I wanted to use this in another way, I could actually download this for automation. So if I wanted to download this ARM template to be used later on, I could download that. I'll X out of that though. And now I'm just going to click create. And now this is just initializing the deployment. And so now that deployment is in process. Now I don't have anything that lives there yet, right? I'm just setting things forward. And now this is done, I can actually pin this to my dashboard, and I can go directly to my resource. And what this has done is this is actually giving me a URL here that if I go here, it says it's live and it's waiting for your content. And so if you, in people watching live, if you go to this URL, this is a real URL. This is a real thing. This is not fake. It is whatever.
Coming at you live, building it.
Yep, exactly. Like it is whatever. You can see that now, CrowdTree, whatever, random thing they've got going for that. So that's just as easy as that is to kind of set up. And in fact, what's nice here is they also have kind of a learn more link that'll take you to the quick start page where we just were about kind of getting everything set up. And so what we're going to do now is like there's a tutorial here for publishing with a static site generator, and that's what we're going to be using. So Jason, let me ask you, like,
Mm-hmm.
what static site generators are your favorites? Like, which ones are you using a lot of? Because there are a lot of good ones. There's, there's Hugo, there's Gatsby, there's I think Nuxt, there is
Yep.
Vue, there's VuePress. Which ones are you using these days?
So currently, almost exclusively Hugo, um, and I'd say a little. I've played around with Jekyll some just to sort of understand the difference. Haven't done anything with Gatsby or really any of the other ones. Hugo, I just once I once I felt really familiar with it and really comfortable with it, I've just kind of stuck with that. But I feel like so many of them really work, in similar ways. Same Markdown type of formatting that you use, and Markdown in general is pretty universal. So some of the themes will have different short links or short codes that you have to learn, depending on which route you go. But yeah, I don't know. I probably have like 10 Hugo sites out there doing some different things.
Yeah. So for people, if you're not familiar, like what these site generators do, Jekyll, which started with GitHub, was kind of one of the first ones. Is the idea is basically you have a file that's largely written in Markdown, but has some other kind of mix-ins and its own sort of like I guess syntax around it that you're able to kind of scaffold out like what a theme looks like if you want to do things like that. And a lot of them are written in JavaScript and are then going to be compiled and pushed as static files through the CI/CD pipeline, which in what we're going to be using will be GitHub or GitHub Actions.
Yeah.
Does that seem about right?
Yeah,
Jason?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think at this point, whenever I'm deploying a new website, like my first thing now is to go look at the repo and see what the GitHub action file gets, see if it got created, and then I know like we're in a good place. I almost always have to change it. Like I can never, like put the right sequence of fields in on the deployment to get it right. It always requires some tweaking.
Yeah, and then we got a couple questions in the chat. So Beldos wants to know, can you customize it instead of having like proud tree, blah, blah, blah? Okay, so you can, and that's actually something we'll show a little bit later, is that you can actually attach like a custom domain name to that if you want. But if you mean, can you customize what the, like random Azure static website thing that comes out? I don't believe so.
Right.
I think that's just going to be something that's random. And
I think that's done for security reasons too. It's just a randomized, engine that creates the part of the public URL, but tries to randomize it. Much like Netlify and a lot of the others out there, whenever they generate a URL for you, they use those words to come up with some nonsensical URL.
Yeah, no, which is a good idea because you don't want people to be able to predict what the next thing will be to do bad things as people are wont to do. The other question we have from Zachary P, do you have to use GitHub or is it preferred? From what I understand, the way that it's working right now, GitHub is the Git repo you've got to use. However, I know that the team is looking at broadening that to any sort of Git repo. Do you? That's my understanding.
Yeah,
do you
that's
know
the same
different?
I've heard. Yep, same deal. I think it ultimately, well, I mean, first of all, this is still in preview, I think.
Exactly,
So,
yes, still preview.
And it just came out during build. So there's a long list of things I've seen in terms of suggestions and improvements. And I know that was a big one was, of course we'll have GitHub in there, but why didn't we have Azure DevOps too? Azure DevOps has a repo functionality. And there's lots of others out there, but GitHub was, I think, what they determined would be the first place to start, and then we can add others from there.
Exactly. And but it's a good question, and that's definitely feedback that we've passed on. And if it's feedback like you have, like maybe you want to use GitLab, maybe you have your own like Git repository, maybe you want to use Azure DevOps, or you want to do something else, that's something that let us know, or let those product teams know, so we can pass that feedback on directly, so that's something that can hopefully be added in before the product goes officially public, because it is still in the preview. So thanks for those questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, but these things are pretty fun. So I'm going to be using Hugo because I like Hugo and I've used that a little bit,
Hmm.
and I've actually already got that installed on my system. So if you want to switch to my screen now, Jason, I'll just show
Yep. We're
that
there
I've
now.
got Hugo installed. Um,
Christina, we got the question that does it work with private repos as well as public repos on GitHub?
yes, it does. Yes, it does. So if you don't want to have it, like I kept mine public, but if you don't want to have a public repo, you can use a private repo as well, which
Hmm.
which is nice. That's a
Yeah.
nice feature. So that's something you can do too. For my case, I just made it public, but that's a good thing. I mean, because there are certain things that obviously, if you're using like best practices, like environmental variables, and you have things on your .git ignore file list of not checking in certain credentials and things like that, then that makes it easier to not have to worry about what's private or public. But if you've got a site or a project that you don't want to be out there, yeah, you can still use that, and that's okay.
Hmm.
The big thing is just once you authenticate and sign in this case with GitHub into the portal, it just needs to be able to have read access to that directory, and is what that needs. All right, so I believe I have the latest version of Hugo installed. I'm just going to do a brew update C. And so Brew is Homebrew. It's a package manager for Mac and for Linux. There are some similar things out there for Windows, like Chocolatey and like the new Windows package manager. And there's Scoop is another one. And the easiest way, if you want to install something like Hugo, is to just say like brew install Hugo. And let's see if there are any updates that I need. Okay, there's some updated casks, but no. All right, just do brew upgrade just in case I need anything. And then what I'm doing as well for my JavaScript, how do you handle your JavaScript versions, or your Node versions, I guess I should say, Jason? What do you use to manage those?
I honestly don't do a lot with those. So in terms of just what's running on my development environment,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think I just installed. I got a new PC actually. What we're streaming through, I had to get a whole new rig to be able to do this stuff. And I just put the most recent version of Node on that, but that's literally the only thing I've done. And we should be getting caught up with her again here in a moment. And we're back, maybe. Can you hear me,
Are we
Christina?
back
Oh
now?
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, we have like an intermittent thing where every 5 minutes or so you just kind of freeze up. So we'll deal with it.
Yeah, well, you froze up on me at this time, so I don't know whose fault it is. I'm connected to my fiber connection, so I don't know. I don't
Well,
know who your I don't know
I,
who your ISP
I
is.
just checked mine. I'm through Comcast, but
Okay.
currently I'm getting 410 megabits per second.
Okay.
So I feels pretty good, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not some kind of just dropping packets thing on my end.
No, totally. I mean, it could be me. I am like directly connected through an Ethernet, but uh, usually my fiber's pretty good. So apologies if
Yeah,
that
I'm
is
jealous.
me. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah,
What's
I'm
your,
at
yeah,
I'm at
you-
I'm at I'm at 600
you're
meg.
good
Yeah,
too.
I'm at
Maybe it's a problem
so
with Skype. Sometimes an NDI or the version of Skype that, well, yeah, that's something I didn't ask, but you're on a Mac, so I don't think
I
there's
am on a
different.
Mac.
It's not like you have different versions to choose from. Well,
This is true.
we'll just deal with it. No biggie.
We'll make it through. Okay, but yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So you're saying you just got your new rig, and you just, I guess, been doing the default tools.
Mm-hmm.
I use something. There is a You can actually use this with WSL2, which is how I usually deal with any of my Node stuff on Windows. But there's just kind of a command line utility called MVM, and that is what I use to kind of manage my various Node versions. So I'm just right now using Node, the LTS version, which is like version 12.
Got it.
But I was just curious what you used when managing that from your dev environment perspective.
I don't really. I just kind of go with make sure I'm using the most recent version of Hugo, and there's very little JavaScript and anything else fancy going on in my sites, so it's been pretty straightforward.
Nice. Okay. All right. So the first thing we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm in my directory, and we are going to kind of like create a new site. And so I'm just going to say Hugo new site, and then I'm just going to do it as quick start, because why not just do the demo.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now it's basically going to tell me, all right, now I need to download a theme into the same named folder, and then I can choose a theme from themes.hugo.io, or I can create my own. Maybe I want to add some content. I can add single files, and I can start the built-in live server via Hugo's server. And so for that, needed to go there. All right, so this is where the theme area is. And what I like about Hugo, I like that Gatsby has a lot of themes too, but there are a lot of different options of different themes you can use to kind of start out with, to kind of make things your own, which is pretty great. And so it's not going to be like as fancy as something like WordPress, although there have been some people, especially on the Gatsby side, who are starting to take things that were WordPress themes and converting them into some of these static site themes, which is pretty great. And so so that is
there's some pretty good aggregator sites out there too, like jamstackthemes.dev will let you, I think see a lot of these same ones plus ones over in Jekyll and Gatsby. But yeah, this is usually where I go first, since I'm just dealing with Hugo.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just trying to think, kind of wanting to rebuild my personal site. So I've got some tags and some different things you can kind of search through. Or I can do things like the one page, resume. Hey, let's see this one right here. This looks pretty nice. Demo this. Oh, this is nice. Whoever created this looks very, very nice. This is definitely better than what I would be able to kind of do on my own. So that's a really nice site there. Let's see. Let us know in the chats if you see any that are kind of some of your favorites. There is
I think someone wants to know what the white device is behind you. It says it looks like a roll of paper towel or toilet paper.
Oh yeah, no, that is. Talk about this.
Yeah, I think so.
This is old. This was a Airport Extreme.
Yeah.
Apple Airport Extreme, back when Apple made routers. They were really nice. I don't use this anymore. I have a mesh system now that I'm also directly plugged into from Ethernet, but this was a very good router back in the day. And then what's really cool, while we're just going through my messy office, this is actually pretty awesome. All right, this is a throwback. Can anybody in the chat tell me what this is?
That's retro. It looks kind of new.
It does look retro. Yeah, this is about 10 years old. Anybody in the chat know what this is?
I don't know.
You can see the back of it.
Nothing yet.
This was a set-top
what's on the
box.
back?
The back, it's got an HDMI. It has optical audio, mono left and right, 2 USBs, and a probably just like a megabit LAN port, and power. So what this was called, I don't know how well you can see the logo here. This
Oh
was
yeah,
called a
Boxy.
Boxy box.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it even has like an SD card in the side. 4 GB. That's how old this is, but 4 GB was a lot. And what this was is this was a set-top box that basically was kind of ahead of its time, where the idea would be that you could kind of collect all of your local and all your streaming content in one place. So it was kind of like a Plex box, kind of like, those Kodi boxes, but it was they had partnerships with some of the big apps out there. Like there was, an official Netflix app, and I think there might have been an official Hulu app, and but you could connect it to like your normal LAN, and you could say, okay, if I could plug a hard drive into it and access my local content, but I could also go to various websites and stream that content directly on my TV. And it was a cool idea. The remote actually was pretty great. This is a complete side journey, but that's what these streams are for.
Yeah.
The remote was actually pretty great. So the remote, this was like the main side, and it had kind of this like this center area was kind of like a mouse pointer, in that it was capacitive, and you could kind of move around left, right, but also press on the middle. I was holding the wrong way. And you had like kind of like your play pause controls, and you had like your menu button here. But then on the back, where it was kind of cool, was that it had this soft keypad, so that you could type in stuff. So if you wanted to, type in your usernames or your passwords or search for stuff, you could do that.
So is this like an early Fire Stick?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it came out, I believe, in 2010. It might have been 20,
So
like
it's mostly
in
for
2010, I think.
It's definitely intended for TV watching.
Yes, definitely for TV watching.
Cord cutters. Yeah.
Exactly. And they were really early. It was a company that originally, if you remember the old Apple TV, and I don't mean like the one that was shorter than the one now, like the black box. I mean like it was white, and it was basically a Mac Mini, but it ran like a weird version of Mac OS, and it had like an Intel processor, and it was overpriced and not great, but there was this kind of great homebrew community around it, and this company called Boxy, and they were kind of a fork of sorts from XBMC, which is now known as Kodi. They created this software where you could like watch Hulu, and you could watch Netflix, and you could watch these other things all within their interface. But it was kind of a pain to go through the process of installing it on an Apple TV. And so they raised some money, and they built a box, and they partnered with D-Link, and the box came out, and then they actually had another box a couple years later that was focused primarily on cord cutting, that had like an antenna with it. Didn't work. They sold to Samsung, and that was the end of it. But that's some of my retro history. I also have an Ouya, if anybody remembers that. The Ouya. This was a Kickstarter thing where it was like a game console. This is very much like a Fire TV stick. This was a game console that raised like $9 million off of Kickstarter, and it ran Android, and the idea would be that you would be able to play games on it. It also flamed out. So that's the legacy there of I have like failed Kickstarter and other failed tech is basically what's my personal office. I have a Pebble smartwatch here somewhere too. So
nice. Yeah, I'm in my basement, and it's just I'm surrounded by old relics of toys and things I thought were important.
And they were, at the time, maybe, kind of. Well, you also got a Clippy shirt on, so yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I love my Clippy stuff.
All right, so this is I like this this girl Julia White. She made this website here for her personal site. I feel like I could do something kind of similar with this. I feel like this is kind of a neat theme. So this is called Hugo Refresh. So I'm going to go to her homepage on that. Star that. I like this. And what I'm going to do now is the Hugo Docs will tell us to add a theme. Okay, so I'm going to go to So I'm going to type in git init. And now I'm going to add the submodule. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the theme URL, and then I'm going to put in themes slash the
Is it just called Hugo
directory.
dash refresh? What's the
Yep,
directory
it'll
name
be
you
just
go with?
themes dash. Yeah, in this case, I believe it'll just be Hugo refresh, Hugo dash refresh.
Nice.
All right, so that's cloning all of that into my quick start, and that is done. And now actually, like if I look into my main site here, I can see where I've got my theme, Hugo refresh with all of my assets and my examples, my fonts, and everything. So if we go into that, that's all there. All right. So that's how I've added my theme over there. And now if I wanted to add some new content, I will just go ahead and I can just say Hugo new post slash hello world dot md.
And sometimes, depending on the theme, they use different folder names. But I would say
Mm-hmm.
by and large, like these commands that they have listed on the Hugo getting started, almost always work with just about any theme.
Yep.
But I have come across a few custom ones that they don't use the same like directory name structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. So sometimes you need to play around with those things. If you run into something, sometimes usually the theme like websites will tell you if there's an issue there. We didn't check that out in depth, which, hey, if it comes to bite us in the butt, that's okay. I'm actually completely fine with that.
Yeah.
That's what these streams are for, is learning and failing. And so in this case, I've got this up where this is what my content file looks like, my hello world content file, and I could actually change that to say something else. And now what I want to do is I just want to start my local server. And I'm just going to start it with the drafts enabled. So I'm just going to go Hugo server -D, and that just means the drafts will be enabled. And this is now built my page, and it is there in just 12 milliseconds, and it is available at localhost 313.
And this might be one of those themes also that it requires you to copy over the config file from the sample site. There's like an example site sometimes.
Oh yeah, good
Yeah,
call. Yeah,
I've seen. Yeah, I've
yeah,
seen
because
this
it's giving me
where.
an error right now saying no layout found for HTML kind home. You should create a template file to match Hugo layouts lookup rules for this compilation. All right, so that might be the case. This themes example site. Yep, content. About me. Yeah, because it's got the config YAML height stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of times it's just for me. I found even if I don't need everything, I just take everything that's inside the example site folder.
Mm-hmm.
But that that includes like the posts and all that stuff too. So you'll end up with like a bunch of just default data in there, which isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah, and you put that in your content posts folder. Is that where you usually put it?
Well, I just match it up with how the structure is there in the example site. The example site folder is essentially the same as your root folder.
Right.
But it's that config YAML that I think is the only like must-have thing. And again,
Yep.
this is kind of dependent on the theme. Like sometimes the steps that you took exactly, like it'll build a site, it'll be there when you go to local 1313, but not all themes work the same.
Right. Okay. Let's try this again. because it keeps giving me a warn. All right, it's trying.
Oh, I see. You got too many content folders, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a way to do this in VS Code, but I'm actually just gonna.
Yeah, I
do
always
this
end
in
up getting Finder. Yep. Just in the same way. And it's like visually easier for me to wrap my head around too, where things are
Totally.
contained. While you're getting that sorted out, I'm going to find there's a Hugo, I think, getting started doc that you mentioned in our
Yep.
docs somewhere. Let me see if I can find the link for that. Yeah, here we go. Okay, I think this is it. Drop this in the chat for everybody.
Yep. All right.
It looks a little better. Let's see.
Looks better. So
Except the config, I think, still needs to go into the root directory instead of inside.
Got it.
Instead of inside content. And because it was a config file, I usually, anytime I mess with that, I usually kill the Hugo server and restart it.
Yep.
Control C might work also.
There we go.
Oh, you don't have to actually kill the process. Just that Control C.
Okay.
And then I go back and I do Hugo server -t just like you did. I don't know if it's more of a my own suspicions around how things work. Oh, looks like we got our freeze. Our freeze with Christina, so we'll wait for her to reconnect here. But for those of you unfamiliar with Hugo, there's just a little Hugo server built in, obviously, that allows you to see your work, see what you're doing. And anytime I make a change to a config file, I almost always have to do something to bring it back up. Usually killing the Hugo server with just Control C. And we're back.
We're back. Okay, so this is definitely a Skype thing because I could see you and me on the stream.
Okay. Well, yeah.
On my iPad, but I couldn't see
Hmm.
you on my Skype thing.
Okay.
So you were saying that what you would usually do when you killed the server,
Yeah, I just Control C to kill that Hugo server -D, and then run it again.
and run it again. Now I noticed that I have both a config toml and a YAML file. Should I get rid of the toml, or is that okay to keep?
I think that what's in the toml doesn't look like it has much in it.
Doesn't have anything in it.
Yeah, I would delete that. I think that was probably created when you created the site, when you ran the
Yep.
command create site quick start. But
Yep.
because we're bringing over a one that's already been built specifically for this theme, I think you only need one.
Okay. So now I want to
That's my
do.
theory anyway.
Yeah, we will see. Worst case, what we will do is I'll just go back to the default theme that they encourage to do. If worst case, if we can't get this working, we'll do the other thing. All right, and then what was our command here? It was Hugo server -D.
Hugo space server -D.
Yeah.
Still a few errors in there, but not as many. So yeah, we might take a look at the inside the browser at local 13, see what it looks like now.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, here we go.
Now we're getting something.
All right. So yeah. So now here we go, and then I've got posts. And yeah, and here's my hello world post, right? Which has nothing on it.
Yeah.
So there we go. All
Sweet.
right. So that's good. Obviously, these are some things in the various contact things. If we were going into these assets, into the content itself, which I've now copied into, if I went into things like posts and credits, there would be some areas where you could adjust.
Yeah, this is always one of the challenges for me too. Is I pick out a theme I really like, and then you just have to like learn the hierarchy of how they've laid it out and where exactly to go to make changes. But it's been fun.
Yeah, without a doubt. So in this case, yeah, I'm not going to make a lot of the changes, and this person has actually done a really nice job in terms of not having a bunch of stuff here that you have to change. In terms of like sometimes people will hard code their own resources into it, which can be frustrating. Like they'll have like their LinkedIn or their website on it, which, hey, totally fair. You're making this available for free. If you want to get that SEO juice, you go for it. But other than this person, I think even this hard link here is just going to the local host site. So that's fine.
Yep.
And yeah, just showing where these things are. So, kind of an about me, posts. And again, this is where like my hello world is. This is, kind of title of various topics, and then showing other subtitles of things. And so if I were to go into this page here where I'm doing kind of about me, where I've got kind of my date here, I'll just change this date to be 27. And then what is today's day? Is the 30th? 29th?
Today is the 30th.
30th. Awesome. And
we're enjoying all of the text messages that are coming in from Sarah Drasner and Allison.
Yeah, let me mute that. Sorry, because that's the problem there is that knowing them, these messages might not be yeah, we might not want those coming.
That's why I wanted to mention it.
Appreciate that. Hadn't even considered. Yeah, my friends are amazing, but not always the people whose text messages you want to come out on screen when you are doing a stream, as they say. All right, no need for summary.
I'm still down for taking any telemarketing calls that you might get during this, though.
Oh, you know what? Yes, because that would be fun. I watched some of those streams on Twitch. I watched like what is his name, like KT Boga and some of the others. That stuff's addictive. You ever watch those?
Oh yeah, yep. That's what I do in my lunch hour.
My favorite is this guy on YouTube. He's from the UK, and he like hacked into the telemarketers like call centers and took over their IP cameras so that he was able to spy on them as they were doing calls.
Yeah, I saw
So
that.
like, what,
That was
yeah,
great.
that's nuts stuff.
I love it.
All right, so here's some important information where you should go. I'm just going to do kind of a H2. All right, so I said, hello, I'm Christina. I'm a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. I rule. I make too many web pages I forget about, but not this one because Twitch is forever. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And when I go to my tags here,
Was it a post? I didn't catch what it was you
yeah,
were
that
updating.
was in my about section. It was an index, and
You might check the terminal and see what it's doing over there if it's hung up. Maybe just another Control C and starting Hugo again.
yeah, actually, you know what? I probably need to commit this. Probably need to actually commit these changes. That would probably help, right?
Well, actually, I just thought of something. Remember when you pushed or when you deployed the static web app? It created a workflow file over there. Did we? I wasn't paying attention. Did you do a pull from that repo back to your local? So you
I
have that
did.
workflow file. Okay. Then yeah. Then I think you're in sync and just pushing it up now if you like. It'll start another build. But why isn't this one? Oh, well, no, it shouldn't matter. But it is in draft mode.
Oh, that might be part of it. Draft false, but that might be part of it.
Nope. Something else I always do around this time too is in the config file, there will be the URL to to this, and it might just say something like example, or I don't know what it would say in there, but we should point it towards the public URL that Azure Static Web Apps created.
Yeah. All right. So I think all right, well, at the very least, let me try this. I'm going to put this at false for my hello world post. All right, and that worked, right? So when I went there to hello everyone, that worked just fine.
Yeah.
And when I go to this about me page, for whatever reason, that is the one that is still not updating. But that could just be something
Mm-hmm.
with my config about how some of my configs are working.
Right.
Um, all right.
Yeah. I don't think we even looked at your config YAML file yet to see what it looks like.
Yeah, my config YAML file is just showing my base URL and then going to my theme and my refresh. So for local, that's fine. But yeah, what I should do is change this base URL to my pipelines file, right?
Right. Exactly. And the title and stuff, like anything that seems obvious that you can change without harming anything. Like the theme has to be the name of the theme, which it already has in there.
Right.
But it
Right.
might. I'm curious to see if like about or how they do their menus. Like if I wonder if there's something with the about page
Yeah, you know what? It
on
might be.
here or
It's
anything.
possible that it might be pulling something from the theme file itself
Mm-hmm.
rather than pulling it from
Yep.
um, where my content kind of credit was.
Yeah, a lot of times the way it's all laid out, the way I understand it. Now I'm not a Hugo expert, but I think that there's like it looks in certain directories within your root directory for things like layout and content and all kinds of stuff. If it doesn't find it, then it starts looking in the themes directory.
Which makes sense. And that would be potentially the case here, where it would be, because I bet if I make a change here.
Yeah, but since that's not your repo, it's like a Git submodule.
No, I
It wouldn't
understand what I'm
actually.
saying. What I understand is what I'm saying is I bet though, if I go to my local server
Yeah.
and refresh that. Oh, it still doesn't. So, all right.
Interesting.
Not messing with that. The error here was clearly using this theme, which looked pretty, but not a big deal.
Yeah, this is where I go in the weeds all the time. It's like, oh, I like that theme, and
And
then I
then you're like,
spend six
oh,
hours.
maybe I shouldn't have done this. Okay, so yeah, so in
Yeah.
my config.yaml file, what I've done here is I've changed my base URL to my Azure Static Web Apps URL. The theme is correct. My title is just going to be Christina messes up Hugo. Default language being English, disable sitemap and RSS, having different taxonomy for tags. Don't feel like I need to mess with any of this stuff. And yeah, so at this point, I guess I need to now commit this to within Git, right?
Yeah, let's push it up and see what happens.
All right. Okay, now I'm getting some sort of Azure pipeline, schema change, restart. All right, let's restart this then.
What was the the repo is a private one, right?
No, it's public.
Oh, it is a public one. Okay.
Yeah, it's. All right, and it's got me my workflows. Okay, this is interesting. So it does not have anything from my quick start yet. This is not, for whatever reason, this is not
Doesn't look like it's pushed anything up.
not pushed up. I have this option to deploy to static website, but that's not what I want.
No, that actually I've done that before. It goes over into storage.
Right.
which is actually something we were talking about maybe mentioning, because
Yeah.
this is just one way of doing, the way you're going about it is just one way of getting the static web app up and running on Azure. I have done the storage route, um, and it's not bad, but the problem with it is you're going to build everything locally and then delete the process pretty much deletes everything in a specific blob storage and then replaces it with what you have locally. So if you're just making like one small change to a file and then it rebuilds everything, to like push that one small change up into storage, you have to replace everything. So it's just kind of a lot of extra effort and bandwidth for unnecessary reasons.
Okay, so I thought that I had my Git configuration configured correctly. I clearly did not, because when I do a Git push, it says that I don't have any configured push destinations. So, all right. So what's my solution there? Do I just need to get my URL, I guess, here?
So you don't have a clone yet of this repo? Is that what you're saying?
I thought that I did,
Yeah.
but
Well, let's just clone it and start, and then kind of start from scratch, I guess. Not totally from scratch, but
totally. All right, because I thought that I had git clone. Should I do that just in the same directory? Or do I just want to start all over?
I would say wherever you keep your all of your static websites. Are they all I always do mine is just in dev, and then I have a folder called static websites, and then everything goes in there, and that's where I clone everything directly to. Doesn't matter, however you keep things organized. I think where you're at right now. What else is in here when you ls?
Oh, I mean, this was just a folder. I thought that I had actually git cloned into this folder from GitHub so that I had everything.
Got it. Okay, I see.
But if that's not the case, what we'll do is actually, you know what? While we're doing this, because this is failure. Let's just now that we realize that this has failed, I'm just going to start over. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new. All right, so I'm now in site 1, which is where I want to be. And so now I just want to do a git clone.
Yeah, that works.
And this is going to give me. All right, that site. So now everything that I had in my GitHub is there. Now, should the process be, because now I'm going to open that up. Now, if I want to create a new Hugo instance,
I think to do a new Hugo instance, you could do the same steps you did before.
Right.
Or you could just copy over that directory you already have, because all it's going to do is just generate a bunch of files.
Right. All right. So this is my new site. My Azure static website build. Okay. With my GitHub file, and this has my Azure static web CI/CD. All right. So what I could do is just copy everything in the quick start folder. Do I need the quick start folder, or do I just need the stuff that's inside of it?
I think you just need. Yeah, just. Yep, I think all that. Exactly.
All right. So I've added all this. All right, there we go. Now I have all of my all these changes. So now I just want to do a git push, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what all it's got committed yet.
I don't think I've really committed anything. Oh, so I guess, yeah, first I should commit, commit
What I
all.
what I like to do, you see where it says 303, it shows you they got like 300 and some new files
Yeah.
it wants to commit. I'm
Yeah.
curious what those are because that seems
That
like a
was all
lot.
the stuff that I just brought in from
Okay,
the
so it is
Hugo.
everything. Yeah,
Yes, that's
okay. Yeah,
everything.
there's just a ton of little files in there. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's just a matter of from within there just committing, yep. And
adding Hugo content. All right. And now it's just a matter of pushing, right?
yep. Or I can't see it in the overlay that we have set up right now through the stream because my video's over it. But down in the lower corner of VS Code, there's that like little push pull logo icon.
Yeah, but now when I actually go to that site,
There
it has me set up with
Yeah.
5 commits.
And then over in Actions, we should see what that workflow file is doing.
Yep, and in then Actions, it says that it is adding the content in, and so it's got them queued, so it's so it is queued, I guess, in terms of adding.
And the log's pretty. It's live for the most part. If you click on where it says adding Hugo content, the text under the results there, and then that build and deploy job in the left where it's actively running through it right now. That shows the full log. So right there where it's at is, I was going to say it's usually about where it fails if it's going to fail, but almost always does the very first time it gets run because there's more changes that you got to make to the workflow file before it can build properly. Especially for newer Hugo themes, I'm finding.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, so it did tell me that like the location API could not be found and that the Azure function will not be created starting build with Oryx.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
if we go into VS Code, we can actually look at that workflow file and I don't know. I feel like I've seen this problem so many times. I might be able to just wing it and walk you through it.
Okay. All right. Let's try that. All right. So this is the workflow file, and it has something to do with API.
Yeah. So right there between 27 and 33. Or no, I'm sorry, just above that. Wait, why can't I? Oh no, yeah, 31 through 32. So the app location. Again, this is theme specific, but usually when Hugo creates a theme or creates a site, it puts it into a public directory that's supposed to be like the root directory it's served from.
Right.
And so what it needs, I think, for the app location is instead of the /, I think public would probably work on line 30.
Okay.
And then because this is just a static HTML site, 31 is, 31 for API location is irrelevant. So that can actually just be, you can just delete the letters for API and leave the quotes. And then for app artifact location, this seems to vary also, but I almost always just leave a / and it's usually happy with that.
Okay.
So that's just one change, but we could try it, but there might be some other things that we need to add to the the file itself for it to actually be able to build the site. And it's just related to like what version of Hugo, like you were talking about environment variables. It's almost like saying, well, I need this specific version of Hugo to build, and it definitely uses a submodule, which ours does. Let me actually find the code I think that should work for you, and I'll just pass it over in the chat.
Yeah.
And yeah, these workflow files, the whole GitHub action things is super cool. It's made my life easier, but learning the YAML language and in general is not fun to learn. And it's very particular about spaces, I've found.
Interesting.
So
all right. And now it is still giving me the app directory public is invalid, but it didn't give me the API thing anymore. So
yeah.
that is at least getting us closer.
So I'm going to drop into our chat. I'm going to
okay.
drop in some code.
Okay.
Or some YAML, I should say. And hopefully the spaces in there aren't going to be a problem. But take that over to VS Code, and it should be, if you just like go to line 18 on that, right there.
Mm-hmm.
So just highlight line 18, or maybe line 18 through 20. Highlight that, and then replace it with what I sent over.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now we got to clean up these spaces and stuff. All those squiggly lines.
Yeah.
I think they're just spaces. So like for the uses on line 18, that should be the dash should be directly below the S. So the hyphen at the very beginning of line 18, just move it to its like directly below steps.
Yep.
Right there. And then submodule should be over, I think, 1 or 2 spaces. 2 spaces, it looks like. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, and then I think after extended, if you just hit a carriage return so that there's a space on line 27, like right after true on 26, just so there's a full space in there. At least that's the way I got it set up on mine.
Okay.
And then name should be right in line with the name above it. Like, so that hyphen on line 28, if you, I think, move that whole build and deploy line back 1.
Got it.
And then I think all the other lines all the way through 41 also might have to come back like 1 space. Yeah. Oh, yep, that looks good. The joys of YAML. Okay, now I think that should do it for us.
Yeah, it's looking good.
I don't see too many errors in there. So yeah, let's save that, push it up, and see what GitHub Actions thinks.
All right.
Christina, do you have any opinions on C#?
I wish I knew more of it.
Okay. We have a question in the chat. What are good libraries to start with after learning the basics of C# in terms of web development?
Oh, God.
I'm saying I haven't done C# in years. Haven't needed it for web development.
Yeah, I mean, ASP.NET obviously has, a lot of stuff. Blazor, I would say the Blazor libraries would be worth looking at. That's what a lot of people are kind of, I think, thinking is kind of the future, because that has a lot of the WebAssembly stuff. So people get really excited about that. That's about as far as I can go. The Blazor stuff, I will say, like looking at some of that stuff has made me kind of excited. So
yeah, I haven't done a lot with it myself, but Frank on our team has been doing a lot. I think Frank's actually on one of our viewers. He was doing
Frank, if you're in the chat, let people know, like, answer better than me and
Okay, so that committed. Now let's go over to actions and see if it likes what we gave it. I feel like there's been a lot of times where I wanted to just turn this part into a drinking game, because you just never know. Is it going to work?
Is it going to work? Is it going to build? Come on, come on.
Where at? How long does it take?
Hey. All right, the app directory is still public. That's still giving us an issue. Okay. Um, please verify your workflow Flex repository structure. So the best thing to do might be to just reinit this and try to do it with the default theme. What do you think?
Possibly, but I think also I could have told you the wrong ones. I think I might have told you to put public where it was the / and / where it was public. So I say before we do that,
before we
jump ship, let's try this.
Okay.
So like around line 39-ish, I think.
Yeah, because we're going right now. We're in our
of the workflow file. Sorry.
Yeah, the workflow file.
Not the config. Yeah.
All right. So 39.
Yeah. So where it says public, let's make that a /. Yeah, exactly. Just reverse those. And yeah, let's push that up and see if it makes it a little happier. And just as a quick time check, we've got about 14 minutes or so left.
Yep.
So I know we're obviously not going to get through this whole process today, so we can, if you'd like, do another one in the future.
Yeah.
This should be like an ongoing series, so I'd love to have you back.
No, I think so. I mean, look, if I can get this to display on our crappy URL, I'm going to be really happy.
That's a success.
That's going to be our success. And then, yeah, we'll have another one where we're like actually more customizing and maybe dealing with some redirect stuff. What my goal had been was to actually not even have to deal with any of this static site stuff. I was going to bring content that I already had from an old website that I had, but my host decided to update the version of PHP without telling me. And by doing that, it broke a bunch of stuff. So if you use Media Temple, first of all, don't. I've been trying to get off of them for years, but they updated the PHP version significantly. And look, I'm not saying that wasn't a good thing to do. I'm just saying that that's now broken a ton of stuff with a site that I was trying to make static and then just push the HTML files. And we wouldn't have had to deal with a lot of this stuff. So, all right, let's go to the actions and see now.
Yeah. Hey, well, no, that's about where it was last time too.
Finished uploading, pulling on deployment, in progress.
Actually, this looks pretty promising.
Fingers are crossed.
As it's building.
Hey!
Ooh.
Hey, we got it.
So if you want, we could go back and look at that YAML file, and I can tell you what piece of YAML magic sprinkles I gave you in lines 18
please
through
do. All right.
27.
We are back.
Actually, let's take a look at it because it should be up.
Yeah, let's take a look
now,
at
right?
it on the site now because it should be up. Hey!
Look at that.
Look at this.
Success.
We did it. 12 minutes to go, and we got it. We got it running. Yeah. And if I go to post here, and I go to hello world, look at that. Hello, everyone.
Beautiful.
Last modified July 30th. Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that
was
a flag. I think that's a flag in your markdown.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, let's go to VS Code and I'll explain just a little bit, I guess, in the last few minutes here.
Yeah. Please do. Please explain what this was.
First of all, let me say that I'm so glad that you picked this subject because it's actually something I know a little bit about and can be a part of the discussion instead of just fielding questions in chat. So
same, Jason. I'm glad because I was able to get this deployed, and not be a total failure on the live stream. Okay, so all right.
So what we did is I think it's around line 18.
Yep.
And actually, I'm gonna close our two video feeds here so that we can just look at just your code. So where's my camera? Turn that off. We can leave your camera on there. So yeah, line 18 that was already in there. I don't know. I might have added the submodules part because this specific theme that we're using has its own theme that specifically says it's a submodule, so that it's always looking into that theme. Anyway, so submodules need to be set to true, and then the next step, like 22 through 26, is mostly it's the Hugo build step that's specific for Hugo, and it also points out which version. Like if you need a specific version, you can call that out here, or you could just say I want the latest version of Hugo.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a flag when you're building Hugo locally where it just automatically will run it in extended mode. But if you want to do that over on GitHub, you have to call it out and say that I'm using the extended mode. So you set that to true, and that's pretty much it. So that's in, I think, one of those documentations. I think that tutorial for Hugo has this called out because I think Aaron on our team actually is the one who wrote the docs for it. So yeah, that's like the little piece of magic that all Hugo deployments need, that little chunk there to look very close to that. Although you can change the version and drop the extended if you don't need it. But that's all I did. And then of course the other key aspects are there at 39 through 40, which is just telling GitHub, when you build my Hugo files and you create this public, or you create this like directory of all my website files, where do you want to put it? And it wants to put it in something called public. So we just had to tell it that's what we were going to do.
Right.
And that's it. And I've never really touched too much else in these workflow files. Although I know, I'm learning every day, like all the different cool things you can do with workflow files and GitHub Actions. It's pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. Now, can you have it set up in a way like would be there a way to templatize like one of these workflow files to either using a different GitHub action or something else, so that if you know that you're creating a Hugo file, it would automatically at least add those the lines at from 18 to 26 at least?
Yes. Yeah, well, I don't know about templatizing it, but most of this stuff, with the exception of lines, I think it's right above, so right in 32 or so, that actually calls out your specific your API token, which is, you'll see like secrets, kind of matches your name of your URL with that proud tree thing there. So that's going to be unique for every workflow file. And there might have been one other line somewhere in here, but otherwise this whole thing is pretty cookie cutter for a Hugo. Oh, looks like we lost her again here. So I'm going to switch over and we'll start wrapping things up here. We just got a few more minutes while her Skype is reconnecting. And by the way, to some of the questions in chat there. Oh, now we're back. Okay. We had one more farewell dropout, but it's a good way to end it. So anyway, I'm back to just the side by side of the two of us, and we can start saying goodbye. What other things would you want to maybe? What would be the next thing you want to do for this? If we're going to schedule another one of these in the future, where do we go, or what? What do you think?
Yeah. No, so the next thing I want to do is basically, I think I would spend some time in advance. Like, we don't need to do it on the stream of kind of customizing what things look like. But what my real goal is to I have an old website. I don't want it to be my main website anymore. I want it to be on a subdomain like old dot, but I want to have it archived. And so what I've been looking into, and this is where the PHP upgrade kind of killed me a little bit, is what we can actually do is you can host multiple sites on different subdomains within Azure Static Web Apps, which is pretty cool. Meaning that if I have my domain at ChristinaWarren.com, I could have old dot or archive dot or V1 or V2 or whatever the case may be. Like, maybe you have an event that you do every year and you have like a different year as kind of your subdomain. And so you can actually do that with Azure Static Web Apps. It's not in the documentation, but I asked the product team that, and they said that it's totally something you can do. And so my idea was to take my old site, have it somewhere where it could still be like posterity, like for the two people who might want to visit blog posts that I wrote in 2007 someday.
Do you ever
I
go
don't,
back to the Internet Archive, to the
yeah.
Wayback Machine, and pull up your websites from like 2000?
Oh,
That's
totally,
so
totally.
fun.
I'm mad. My GeoCities site is only partially backed up because I was basically unpaid labor for GeoCities when I was a middle school and high schooler. It's a true story. And I think that when Yahoo bought the company and realized that 13-year-olds, because that's how old I was when I started doing stuff for them, were basically their moderation team and also their tech support, they like freaked out, which is understandable. And we're like, oh no, this is not something that we will allow anymore. But because of that, I had a custom GeoCities domain, and when the scripts that happened, like this is a decade ago now, when they archived GeoCities, it didn't for people who had special like URLs, it didn't grab all of that. So only some of like baby Christina's websites have been archived. But yeah, I love to do that. But if you didn't want to do that, if you wanted to say, okay, I just want to preserve this for whatever reason, you could have that on the subdomain. So that's what I would like to do
Yeah.
in the next thing would be to look at that, how you would take existing content that, maybe you did it with a static site generator, maybe you literally just scraped, files from something and made it, it's just HTML files and hosting that someplace else, so that you're not paying for it because it's going to be, if it's under, a certain size, it's going to be free to host on Azure.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, nowadays there's a lot of different places you can get something similar in terms of the service, but
Yeah,
it's been
sure.
really fun to have. I mean, of course, you and I have, like this Azure toolbox to our to do whatever we want with for the most part. And but even if I wasn't, like, I've just found this process to be easier than some of the other stuff out there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to like seeing more about how to take, stuff that you've already had in like a WordPress site or something like that, and actually, more or less porting it over to a static site. So
Yeah. So the first step I think would be like porting old content, and I think that the next step would be actually kind of doing one of those headless scenarios, like we were talking about before, where you could either locally or someplace else have like a Ghost install or a WordPress install, but all the content is actually being served via a static site, because that could be really useful if you've got like less tech savvy people who, like, even if you can teach them Markdown, like I love teaching people Markdown, but maybe like that's just going to be like too much overhead and they already know the way that they do stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about, oh, do I need this plugin or do I need to do this or that? It's like, okay, just worry about Ghost or WordPress to enter in your content, and the whole way that it's going to be crunched down and deployed is going to be using a static website.
Yeah, I think because things are static files, it just makes like automating a lot of things so much easier or much more possible. One of the things I'm looking to do with some of my Hugo sites, and actually this Hugo site that will be the back end of, or not the back end, but like the front end of this series that we're doing all around Azure, is a Hugo site. And I would like to make it so that the Markdown files that make up a post, let's say for you and I, this episode, that those Markdown files are generated from another automated process that might be something like, me closing a card within Azure DevOps or in Trello or something like that. Like I'm tracking all the information about our episodes, and then when I mark that card as done, kind of in the Kanban type of process flow, that then, a script kicks off and like creates the Markdown, puts it in the right repo, pushes it up to GitHub, and then, anyway, now that I'm just working with just flat files that they just have to be pushed into the right place at the right time, like that's much more possible.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And I think that makes it a lot less overhead for people, and you don't have to worry about a lot of other configuration stuff. And you can automate it more. Like you said, you can just kind of create triggers to do that stuff. So
yeah, exactly. Well, Christina, we are just about out of time, but thank you so much for joining and being one of my early guests on this show. We definitely have to do it again. I always have fun hanging out and chatting with you, talking old school retro toys and non-existent startups from back in the day, and
totally
geeking out and things in general. So it's been really fun. Thank you to everybody that's on the chat. We did have a few other questions about Azure, but some of our other chat people have kind of answered those. So for those of you not familiar with Azure, our cloud, Microsoft, you can do a lot of cool things in it. And some of the stuff we were just talking about today is just one of the easy processes of getting a static website up and going on the new Azure Static Web Apps service, which is pretty cool. So with that, I will say goodbye, and be sure to follow both of us on Twitter. Film Girl is Christina on Twitter. I'm Jason Hand, and we'll see you again real soon. Thanks for coming by.